Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Health Coach Success Virtual Masterclass. My co-host Laura and I worked hard to pull together this special online event just for you. It's a 5-day mini course in which we interview the best and brightest health coach and marketing experts on the planet to try to understand how they've become such great coaches and entrepreneurs. Included in the 20-plus expert interviews are some names you might recognize. Primal Health Coach Institute founder Mark Sisson, celebrity nutrition expert and New York Times bestselling author J.J. Virgin, author, cardiologist, and staunch health coach advocate Dr. William Davis, Michelle Liotta of Health Coach Power Community, Michelle Norris, CEO of Paleo FX and ID Life Nutrition, and many, many more. The Health Coach Success Virtual Masterclass is now available and totally free for a limited time. Check it out at primalhealthcoach.com/success. Trudi Lebron is an action taker. There's nothing like a great story of hard work and bootstrap pulling to make you feel inspired. And that's exactly what happened when we interviewed Trudi Lebron. Trudi is the business coach for impact-driven coaching businesses. She specializes in equity and inclusion education and strategy for the coaching and personal development industry. Trudi teaches what we all need to know more about: equity, diversity, inclusion, and social impact. She mentors coaches to not only have a successful business and earn money, but to do it in a socially responsible way. Remember that our show notes can always be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. We'll tag you back. And don't forget to tag Trudi too at Trudi Lebron. We really hope you enjoy today's awesome interview with Trudi Lebron.
All right, today we have Miss Trudi Lebron. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm super excited for this conversation. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. We love talking to people that can help our coaches figure out how to actually be professional coaches.
Yes.
So we are super excited about this.
Great.
So, as a place to start, as always, kind of like our little flow, we love to hear kind of your origin story, the kind of like 3 to 5 minute backstory of how Trudi became who you are today.
Great. Okay. So the place that it really starts is, it's funny because I have this whole like professional, bio and all this, but my father loves to remind me that when I was a child, a small child, he would take me to people's houses, like, family, friends, and I wouldn't play with other children. I would tell other children how to play better. So like coaching other children on their play. He tells me that all the time. So, but the real story is I was a teen mom and I left high school in 9th grade to raise children. And, the world gives you really strong messages about what your life is probably going to be like when you have that kind of an experience, that kind and other like difficult things. And I was pretty stubborn about that. And I was like, no, like I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to build my own life. Right. And so I worked really hard, and with the support of, family and mentors and coaches in my own life at that time, I was able to finish high school early, go to college, work really hard. And basically I ended up being about 24 years old with 2 children, had finished college, was on my way to grad school. And I had really enough at that point of just working for other people. And, because I worked all through college and I was like, this system just doesn't work. Like all these nonprofits, like you just work so hard to make so little. And the quality of life that you have because you're putting in so many hours is just, it's just so difficult. And I started dabbling on the side. I took the theater degree that I had earned that my father was like, what are you going to do with that?
Theater,
right.
yeah.
And I started hustling like as a teaching artist. So I was going into schools, teaching young people how to, how to act and do drama and all of that stuff. And so I got that entrepreneurial bug like really early. Like I was really used to just making money on the side. And that really allowed me to learn how to build a network and to, like be with people, earning money, having that kind of hustle spirit. From there, I got a graduate degree in psychology. I picked up coaching certifications, along that degree program. I started a PhD program in social psychology. I actually have completed all of my coursework for my PhD. And then business took off and I was like, I can't write this dissertation right now. Like I have to run this business. And I got to the point where I was consulting, using all the academic background I had, doing a lot of consulting on the side. And I was doing consulting around like youth development, clearly pulling from my own background, working with young people who had like really high risk backgrounds. And I was able to make enough money as a consultant doing coaching and program development that I was able to leave full-time work. And at that point, I started helping other people how to build businesses. And when I got into the coaching industry, what I noticed was that a lot of the work that I had been doing as a consultant and in the nonprofit world had not yet transferred over into the coaching industry. So there was a lot of attention in the nonprofit world and in the education world around equity, diversity, and inclusion, about social impact, about like impact-driven business. And those conversations just were not happening in the coaching industry. And I just love the coaching industry. I really just fell in love with the people, the work, and I decided that I was going to focus all of my energy on really elevating that practice. So now my business is to help coaches build impact-driven businesses. So coaching practices that are really impact-driven and obviously everyone has to make money. We want people to make money, but we want to make sure that we're making money and also creating the kinds of social like transformations that we want in the world. So I help people do that. And then I also get to work with some pretty big businesses in the coaching industry and personal development industry to start looking at their corporate structures and bring in more diversity, equity, and inclusion, more social impact. And that work is really amazing because I get to see these like multi-million-dollar businesses take on some really uncomfortable things, but really create a culture change like in the way that they work and in the way that they're building new audiences. So I have a lot of fun in my work.
Wow, you have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Quite a lot going on.
It's been a journey, that's for sure.
No doubt. That is a incredible journey, actually. It's interesting. Like, I like how you articulated, I mean, like, as you were telling your story, I thought to myself, okay, Trudi's an action taker. Would you say that because you describe, coaching the kids how to play better. I mean, and even like going through being a teen mom, but graduating school early and then going through this higher education, like I feel like you are an action taker inherently. Would you say that's something that's probably a quality that's probably born into you?
Yeah, that's 100% true. I believe that my life is a result of my actions, right? Like that we call that it's like self-efficacy and an internal locus of control, right? Like those are psychology terms for that. And so I definitely I'm very strong on that scale, that I believe that our lives are a big result of the action that we take. And, we just have to show up for ourselves.
I was about to ask her almost the exact same question. What I wrote down was, do you believe that you're a natural entrepreneur? So something very similar, right? This, I just kind of phrased it differently, but that's the big takeaway I got from your story as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely a natural entrepreneur. I never fit in well with like traditional systems. Like I wasn't a good student. not academically, like, but I just couldn't do school. I was like, why am I sitting here in this building? I don't get it. It was always like that, you know? And even when I was in high school and left high school, I graduated early because I homeschooled myself. Like, I was like, this school does not work for me, you know? So when I was working in like 9-to-5 nonprofits, and that's a joke because no nonprofit is 9-to-5. It's like you're working all of the time. I was just like, this just doesn't work for the way that I want to live my life. And so like having the ability to say, like, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my life to feel like? And what impact do I want to create in the world? And then, okay, how do I build that new thing?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, on the entrepreneurial spirit sort of track, I jotted that down too, because what I thought was interesting is the way you described yourself. Like, I've always been entrepreneurial because I always had like side gigs, and even how you just described, like, you know, structured like school, structured business organizations didn't feel right to me, which is interesting because I've never heard entrepreneurialism described that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, people think like, if an entrepreneurial person is one who will go and start businesses and make money, but it doesn't always start that way. It starts with a level of awareness around your comfort in certain environments. And so I think anybody listening, if you ever doubted if you're entrepreneurial, ask yourself, like, have I always had side hustles? Do I feel weirdly like tethered when I'm in structured work environments? Like, you might very well be entrepreneurial, you just don't know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree. I think there's like one dominant image of what an entrepreneur looks like. And, you know, that's the person who like did all the right things and started the business and raised some money. And, you know, and when you tie yourself to that image, it's easy to be like, oh no, like that's not me. Like, I'm not going to go and do it that way. But there's so many ways to get to the goal, right? That is like my core truth in life, is that there's just so many ways to get to your goal. And so if you're feeling like that structure, that 9-to-5 structure, working for other people or whatever it is, isn't for you, there's probably a way to figure out how to do it your own way.
Yeah, now more than ever, I'd say.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way that you did, like whether it was school or it's the 9-to-5 job or whatever, but for whatever reason, there's this, well, and I guess that's a question for you, is what is it that causes some people to actually take action about that and figure it out, and others that are just perpetually unsuccessful and unhappy?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. Yeah, there are so many factors in what makes
there's got to be
successful. And that was actually like my some of my graduate research was around that. Like, I was really fascinated with the idea that people could come from the same places and one person would have one type of outcome and other people would have other types of outcomes. And, you know, it's a combination of like confidence for sure. And what I was talking about before, that locus of control, like the degree to which you feel like you are in control of your life versus the outside world has like major influence over your life. So where you sit on that scale influences it, but also all of these other things that are related to very uncomfortable things like privilege, like how much privilege you have, how much security you have, how much access you have to support. So for example, when I was a young mom, if I was like kicked out of my house and couldn't feed myself and was homeless, I'd have a very different story to tell you today. You know what I mean? And maybe it wouldn't be like, I mean, there's no way to guarantee that, but like statistically speaking, the chances that I would be here are very, very slim, right? So it's really important that we have support, that we have community, that we have, that we're open to like learning and committing and actually showing up and doing the work. But it also does start, there's like this beginning, like if you don't even believe it's possible, you can't even start to pursue those things.
Right. Right. 100%. And so I was a single mom for a long time, but I wasn't a teenage mom. You know, I just was divorced and single mom for over 10 years. But like you, there was some sort of, God, I don't know what it was, but well, I kind of do. I guess it was the F you to my ex-husband that I wanted to be more successful than he was. I didn't want to have to rely on him. I was terrified of relying on somebody that I felt I couldn't trust for stability, financial stability, like all these things, right? So I was able to take that piece of motivation and turn it into something that sort of made me successful versus another mom on my street who was also a single mom, divorced, who went through probably 4 different live-in boyfriends in the same period of time. And it just was not a good situation. Like her poor son. But the thing is, she's a sweet woman and she loves her kid and she's all of that. But the difference in how we both took that same situation and what we did with it was 2 different things. And I'm wondering if part of this was kind of the way we grew up and our perceived support system, you know, that I had parents that believed in me and brought me up that way. I don't know what her background was like. And, you know, I empathized with her so much and wanted to be able to offer to help, but I was afraid to approach her and offend her or anything like that. But, you know, I would kind of love a little bit, I guess, your 2 cents there on how as coaches we can help foster that sense of empowerment, that sense of, or how to pull the motivation out of people or help them find it without offending. As a coach and somebody hires you, it's different. They're paying you, but just in an everyday relationship because you care.
Yeah. You know? I think that I think community is so important here, right? So first I want to say that you are absolutely right that there's a lot of reasons why you would have taken one path versus your neighbor who taken another path. And you said perceived support system, and sometimes it's perceived, but sometimes it's actual support system. Sometimes people just don't have the support. And so, you know, it's hard to judge people and make assumptions about the choices that people are making if we don't know what it's like inside. But as a coach, what I really try to encourage my clients to do, who are developing coaches, is to learn how to check in and be in community with people and have consent to be supporting people, right? So, and that's why we're in this world, right, where it's we don't even know our neighbors anymore. And that's a normal thing, right? But if we knew people and if we went out of the way to just get to know people, we would have a little bit more of a sense of what's going on. And we can offer hey, do you want to come over and have a cup of coffee? Or do you want to talk about this thing? Or I see that this is going on. Do you want my feedback on that? And just asking, you know, you're not making judgment. You're not giving unsolicited advice, but you're opening up the conversation, and then you can let that person either accept it or not. And we just have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the things that you mentioned in terms of what qualities folks need to kind of really tap into their action taker entrepreneurial spirit, it was things like confidence, self-efficacy, access to support, environment, the belief that it's possible, this always fascinates me because that's what health coaches try to impart in their clients.
Right.
And every time I get down these personal development wormholes, there's the parallels are unmistakable. Personal development is personal development, whether that's you're trying to personally develop your health, your happiness, your finances, whatever it might be. There's so many just consistent aspects to it that they're impossible to overlook. And I think once you hear it enough, I don't know, as somebody who works in the personal development space, I feel like a certain amount of repetition is what it takes for people to finally acknowledge it. Do you find that to be true?
Oh, that's so true. And that's that's with everything in life. We have to hear something over and over and over in order for it to integrate and to really, I always use this expression of settle in our bodies, right? The lesson has to really be anchored within us. And that requires sometimes that we learn the same lesson over and over and over.
Yeah.
But that's just part of the process.
And I was thinking about it in the context of new coaches starting their business. That I'm just kind of, new coaches starting their business want all the answers right away. They want it to be successful right away. And we always have to kind of, just kind of talk them down a little bit, put in the reps, just do the basics you need to get done. And I also think that new entrepreneurs, and honestly in any probably category, just need to spend time in this personal development echo chamber to keep hearing and keep hearing and keep hearing that confidence, resiliency, self-efficacy, And if you hear it
And
enough,
patience. I want to say that, like patience, because this is a long game. Personal development is a long game, and business is a long game. If you're starting a business and you are thinking, I need this business to work yesterday, that's actually the worst thing for your business. And I get that feeling. I know what that's like for sure. And there are strategies that you can take to, you know, make some progress, but that's not the healthiest way to approach your business. You need to give it time to grow, to breathe, to experiment. It's a long game, man.
well, can you elaborate on that? Like, why does it have to be a long game?
Well, because if you rush into business, you're making decisions from this like urgent, this like the sense of urgency that just isn't good for decision making. You're making the best choice for the moment, but not the best choice for long term. So for example, one of the things that folks want to do all the time is like launch a program, like launch a group.
Oh my gosh.
It takes so long to launch a group program, right? And you could do it fast. You could throw together some curriculum and throw up a landing page and whatever. But if you don't have the audience of people who are gonna buy it, then you've invested a lot of time for nothing. And what you might be better off doing is focusing and really honing your one-to-one practice and like building it slowly and refining your techniques and building a brand, building an audience. And then when you're ready for a group program, now you have the audience, now you have the expertise, now you have the testimonials, and you've made some money along the way. So it's just a smarter move to build slowly than to like rush into this bigger thing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like you climbed into our brains. And just, we have that written word for word in our coach course curriculum.
That's so funny.
You know, I relate it to, there's this, like, I'm kind of a home decor nerd, and there's this movement called the slow home movement. This is going back a ways. And the slow home movement is like you move into your home and you live there for a bit with no furniture. And then you curate beautiful pieces that work in the space. You're not in a hurry to go to IKEA and like load up a truck with just to get, you're curating the pieces that fit the space. And that's how I think about programming too, and business development, like slow business. But you're right, people are in such a hurry. Everything you just said, we're just like, we're doing the praise hands emoji like in real life.
Well, and it's applicable across the board. We talk to our health coaching clients about weight loss.
Right.
And that if you take this in a methodical, like the faster you try to just drop weight fast, the more poor decisions you make relative to your long-term health. The same thing holds true for trying to overcome some sort of condition. You've got to, your body, you know, you didn't become sick overnight. I know it might feel that way, but really, this was the culmination of years of insult or injury to your body that is finally starting to manifest itself in symptoms. You know, and you've got to give yourself time. And I'd love your opinion about this, because we've been saying for folks that are coming to a health coaching practice with zero baseline, zero foundation, right? They're soccer mom or an attorney or a sales rep or whatever, right? No educational professional background in this at all whatsoever. And they want to be a full-time health coach. Okay, that's the goal. And then they're frustrated when a year later, they've had 2 clients. Right. So I keep trying to tell them, Erin keeps trying to tell them that it takes time. You have to have patience, but there's something magical about 3 years.
I agree.
Okay. You know, and my rationale for this is like your first year, you're building your foundation, you're finding your identity, you're creating your content, you're building an audience. You're going to get some clients in your first year. Absolutely. Matter of fact, health coaching, there's not a whole lot of overhead. So chances are you can be profitable in your first year, right? Your second year, now you've got a year's worth of content. You've got followers that are now referring you other followers and other clients. You are slowly building an actual brand because now you've kind of figured yourself out. And then by your third year, suddenly you're not the new kid on the block anymore. People are beginning to be like, oh my gosh, you have a question or a problem about such and such. You need to go see Trudi.
Exactly.
Right. And that's when things seem to take off. But that is, of course, assuming that you're able to commit to doing actionable steps on a regular basis over and over and over again. Right. The more, like in my case, I was working 50, 60 hours a week. Plus I had 4 kids. Plus I opened a gym. right? So it took me like 5 years, took me longer. So that was kind of my rationale for this 3-year mark. So when you're talking with your clients about patience and kind of setting expectations, where do you kind of fall there?
Yeah, I definitely tell people to be patient. I don't often get clients who are brand new to the space.
Mm-hmm.
Usually my clients are people who are, even if they're going into coaching, they're sticking in the scope of their career.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit of an easier transition to make.
For sure.
So for example, I have a client who was a professor, has a PhD in like women and gender study, and she's doing coaching around like sexuality and stuff like that. There's alignment there. She doesn't have to wait 5 years. She has a PhD. She's put in lots of time. She just needs to build some structures so that she can get the clients and build the brand, right? So for her, it's going to be a little bit easier. But if you're just completely shifting modes, you have to think, how long did it take you to learn the thing that you are an expert in now? Like if your previous career, like how long did you have to how much time did you have to put into that to be successful? The assumption that coaching is going to be different than that is a little bit insulting. And like, people think, maybe a lot of it, like I think there's a misconception that coaching is this like fluff career. And I know why that is, because not everybody takes it as seriously as they should, but, or could be. But if you want sustainability and you want to really be making money, and not only that, but if you want to be effective and impactful, because that's the other thing, you can be great at sales and marketing and sell a bunch of snake oil, right? That doesn't mean that what you're selling works.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you want to be effective and good at what you do and have that trust from your audience and like a real strong, integrous brand, it takes just as much time as any other career.
I do want to dive into that with you, because you talked about these impact-driven entrepreneurs, and I think that the role of impact is sometimes glossed over.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I just want to get clear for our listeners, like who your clients are. You kind of touched on that, the one woman with the PhD, but like who generally are your clients? There are people who have an area of expertise that are moving into a coaching space, or how would you describe your clients?
So my clients are typically people who have some kind of mission-driven heart and intention and personality. So they tend to be people who come out of the education space, the activism space, the nonprofit world, who want to be entrepreneurs. And so oftentimes they want to be coaches or some variation, coaches, trainers, consultants. They want to have like more of a service-based business. And so, and what they want, and usually they've tried on their own or have tried other ways to do business, what they want is to do business in a way that aligns with their values and does not compromise that. What a lot of business coaches will help people do is build a business. And what they'll say is like, build your business, make a lot of money, become profitable. And then the things that you care about, you can like work on that later. Like your impact work can happen later. Like you can give or donate or have scholarships like later. But my clients are people who that doesn't sit right in their system. They're just like, no, like I'm here for a purpose. I want to serve these communities and I need to figure out how to do that and also make money, at the same time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you help them set up the foundations of their business while concurrently influencing their impact.
Yeah. Yep. So it's a combination of the frame, actually right behind me. My framework up here is about mission-driven values, profit-driven focus, and freedom-driven spirit. And so everything you do is motivated by your values and your vision and your mission. The focus you approach your business with is really about making sure that you're profitable and well-resourced so that you can be doing like the mission and values work that you want to be doing, and that you're committed to like having this free life, this flexible life where you are in control and you have lots of like flexibility.
Okay, that's cool, because that all happens concurrently. It's not like first you do this, then you do first you do the business, then you get the impact, then you get the freedom. It's like
it's all at once.
Cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know. I mean, I guess when you're we hear business coaches say this all the time, and it is so true. And it's a really hard thing, I think, for folks that come to coaching from this sort of mission driven, especially like a nonprofit space where they feel guilty making really good money, because if they were independently wealthy and could afford to do it for free, they totally would. Right.
Yeah.
But if they were independently wealthy and could afford to do it for free, then they can't afford to do it for free. Right. So,
Sure.
Okay. So you need to get independently wealthy. Step one. Okay. And you can do that by providing value through your sense of purpose. And the more money you make, the more freedom you have to give back. And, because this is something I hear from people when it comes to setting their pricing, is the people I really want to help can't afford my services. How do you help people over that little stumbling block?
Yeah. So when I started my business now, I incorporated my business in 2013. And that was my consulting work, very much focused in nonprofit consulting, educational consulting. The setup for that business was that I would leverage my expertise and serve clients who had money to pay me, so that I can pay myself. So that I could have programs and services and initiatives that I didn't have to charge as much for, that were really more aligned with my values. So for example, I have a program that it's in its 4th year. It's called Be a Boss. It runs locally in Hartford, Connecticut, where I am from and where my office is. And that program is $50 a month, $50 a month. It's for people, usually it's women of color who work in like nonprofit space, educational space, don't have a lot of like flexible income to be investing in personal development, but want to start taking on that kind of work. I can do that. I can have a program that's $50 a month. And we have, now again, we have done 4 cohorts of it. They make a year-long commitment to participate. We have like breakfast every month. It's like an in-person program for 3 hours on one Saturday morning a month. And I can afford to have that program, and it's not a like burden at all. It actually is one of my favorite things to do. And now 4 years in, we have like a facilitator for the program, and I have a 1,000 square foot workshop space that we do other things with, but we also run that program there. But I can do that because I have contracts for $40,000, and a mastermind and like all these other things. So that program doesn't need to be quote unquote profitable. It pays for itself. We buy the food, like we pay the facilitator, but it doesn't need to be this thing that's like all this money. And so now that model works for me. That may not work for everybody, but there are social impact models that I have. My opinion is that like everyone can find a way that is comfortable for them to be making an impact in the areas that are really important to them. And then as you scale your business, you scale your impact.
Yep. Love it. There's a guy who, so he's got a company called Steve's Paleo Goods. This guy owns a CrossFit affiliate too. And he's put out, sort of paleo friendly snack foods like granola bars and cereals. And he's also now has like sauces and things. And 10% of all his proceeds goes to fund a scholarship for at-risk kids to be able to go to his gym and do something after school instead of getting into trouble, right? So there's ways that you can even structure something like that. Take a portion of all your proceeds, put it aside, and now you can give away a scholarship to somebody else that might need your coaching services. So there's ways that you can do this stuff, and you got to get the guilt out of it,
Yeah. The nonprofit industry, I worked for years on this, like within myself, because I came out of that field, and I will never, ever forget the first business incubator program that I was in. It was like a local in-person program. We were like writing a business plan, and there were lots of people in this program that were like looking for investors and like very like techie kind of companies. And I'm this like, service-based like consultant. So we're like writing a business plan, and I will never forget this woman from like the Small Business Association coming over and looking at my projections, like my budget, and being like, why does your budget end in 0? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, pointed out, she was like, every dollar that you are bringing in, like every projected dollar you're bringing in, you're spending. And I was like, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
And she was looking at me so like with this look of confusion. And I was looking at her also with this look of confusion. And I did not understand what she was trying to bring to my attention. And then she said, you know, you could like make a profit, right? If you know that you can end your year with more money than what you spend. And that, I mean, this sounds silly, but like it blew my mind. Because I had always worked in nonprofits. I was in leadership in nonprofits, but like managing like millions of dollars of like federal grants and things like that, right? If you don't spend every dollar you take in, that's actually bad. Like you have to give money back. It could affect your ability to get more money in the future. So I had this programming around the way that I had been working for years that told me that every dollar that came in, I had to spend. And so it was really a whole paradigm shift. I was like, whoa, man, like that is blowing my mind. And so I find that is I call it the nonprofit mindset. Like that is one of the things that falls in that like nonprofit mindset. And people carry that in when they leave their jobs, their nonprofit jobs, they carry that into their business and they think that it's the same thing. And there's a lot of undoing that has to happen for people to be like, oh, I can make money and put some in the bank and like hire other people and pay them equitably. Like that's mind-blowing stuff for people.
Yeah.
Yes. Tons of unlearning to be done. Well, and you know, kind of that story you told about the workshop you hosted, you know, I just finally came to that point in my business where I could offer a low ticket, low barrier to entry, really high touch, really impactful program. But I had to spend like 5 years about in the high ticket space, high ticket one-on-one space to be able to afford it. And do you think that's an element that coaches need to think about? Like if you start with a low ticket, really available, we talked about this with the context earlier about don't start with group coaching, start, you know, hone your skill as a coach. But even in terms of pricing, your pricing model, you need to be able to afford to run that really, really, really effective low ticket program.
Yeah. So my perspective on this is really a case by case basis. My consistent advice is that if there is something inside of you that is calling you to have something that is accessible or to create a way for people to be able to access your programs and your services who can't afford this high ticket thing, I feel like it is your moral obligation to figure out how to do that in a way that works within your business model, right? So if that means that you're selling high ticket, is there a way that you can do just even a few sliding scale slots or scholarship slots or partial payment slots or whatever, like not an incredible amount, but just even if it's just one, because here's the thing, it's this whole mindset around all the mindset work that we do about like showing up and taking action and being abundant, right? If we believe those things are true, we have to show the universe that we are showing up for that calling, right? So if it's in you and you feel called to do it and you're just like, oh, that can wait. I don't know. What does that tell the universe? Like what is it? It means that it's not like high value, right? Like it's not a priority. If something is a priority, you make it a priority. And so it is a different way to look at your business. You make different decisions. It's not necessarily the way to be like most profitable.
Right.
But for me and for the kinds of audience that I attract, it is the right way. Like it is the just way to do business.
Well, it's kind of this abundance mindset, I guess, you know, because I know that I have a scarcity mindset about money. I'm working on it. And so I can't, you know, I can't afford to run the inexpensive program until I have enough money in the bank which is my scarcity mindset talking.
Well, that might not just be scarcity mindset. Like things around numbers, we can look at it. We could be like, oh, you can afford it or you can't. Like that's math, right? Like that's a mindset. Like that's math. But what I'm saying is that if you have a calling or a desire to serve people, maybe it's not the low ticket group program that needs to happen. Maybe there is another way,
right? Okay.
That the impact work can happen.
Cool. Yeah, you know, I look at some businesses that I admire that offer Like, for example, Keto Gains comes to mind. They have a free Facebook group, regardless of whether people are paying them, where there's lots of content in there and they answer questions personally, and it creates this tremendous sense of community, and it does a lot of good for people that can't afford their services.
Right.
It's also why I think content marketing can be so powerful, that there's a little piece of what you do and advice that can go into every piece of content marketing that helps position you as a content expert,
right,
helps build trust with your target market, but can actually do some good for people if they have the skill set to actually apply it somehow.
Absolutely.
Right.
I agree.
So, I mean, there's small ways that you can, because, interestingly, early on in our program, when we were bringing on new coaches, we would see some questions and some, conversations in our Facebook group around giving away information, what you should charge people for. And Erin and I both piped up on several occasions saying, I don't charge people for information. It's not my information. I learned it from someplace else.
Right.
So sorry, not mine. So I am more than happy to answer a question for somebody. I am more than happy to provide someone with information to the best of my knowledge in a way that I feel might be relevant to them. But if what they want is an hour of my time, that's entirely different. Right?
Absolutely. That's why I love podcasts. That's why I love podcasts. So I co-host a podcast called That's Not How That Works. And that show is all about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we're tackling, really sensitive issues around race and justice and marginalization. And we talk about it particularly within the context of like the coaching and personal development industry. So we have like 70 something episodes, right? And it's just like teaching, and we have a great community around it. I just started a second podcast called Business Remixed. That's just like all the business content, because it is a way to teach and to show. And like when I was starting my business, I learned so much from just podcasts when I didn't have the money to like invest in coaching or the whatever course it was. I could like find a podcast on, how to create an opt-in, like the basic stuff, and apply it. Right. But yeah, at some point you get ready or you reach a level where you're like, okay, I hit a plateau. I've taken in all the content that I can, and I'm ready for some coaching, but hopefully by then, you have a little bit of flexibility to make an investment in some kind of support. So yeah, the support that you're not I like that idea that you're not charging people for information. No. What you're charging for is like the accountability, the coaching, the process, the time. That's
the investment you're making in them.
Right. And the transformation.
Right. And that personal touch, because I mean, information is incredibly powerful, and a lot of people can take information and run with it, but a lot of people can't. But what the free information does for those folks is it starts to open up their confidence a bit. Like, I kind of understand this. I kind of can wrap my mind around this. If I had a coach to really help me learn this, so information can be a really great conversion tool. I'm sure the Keto Gains guys is a great example. They sell out their boot camp every time because they've given away so much free information, and people have almost enough information to achieve their goals, but there's just one little bit missing. And that little bit that's missing is whatever the accountability, support, education of a coach.
Yeah. And you want that. You want people, you are more likely to be successful in a program, whether it's with a coach or online program, when you come to the course or the experience with some kind of like base information, like some kind of content knowledge. I wouldn't take a client who didn't know what an opt-in was, or, you know what I mean? Like who had some like real basic foundations in place, things that they have tried already. Because it's just a waste of time. Like go listen to these podcast episodes, tinker around with some of these things, and then come back. And then the work can be really meaningful. But I wouldn't, people have to do a little work up front.
They do. And I'm thinking about this in terms of like, some of the objections we get from our students and graduates community, like new coaches, is around not totally having clarity on how the coaching client relationship is going to work. And it's like, look, strangers aren't just going to float into your midst and be like, I don't know anything. Can you help me? They've been following you for a while, to Laura's point. They know, like, and trust. They already know kind of what your message is, kind of what your approach is. They've booked the discovery call with you because they like what you're saying. They can wrap their mind around it. you know, the parallels are so strong between business coaching and health coaching. It's crazy. But like I would never, same as you just said, I wouldn't take on a client who didn't know what I was about. If a client came to me and said, hey, I want to get shredded for my beach vacation, I'd be like, yeah, but I don't do that. That's not what I do. Like, don't you know what I mean? So like, yeah, there's this baseline level of knowledge that people come into the relationship with.
And people should be like, for folks who are listening, who are developing their businesses, they should be thinking about that. Like, what's my baseline? Like when I take a client, like, what do I want them to come to me with? Or what are my yeses and what are my nos? Like, no, I don't do that. Yes, I do this. Like, you should have some of those. I know, again, I get what it's like to be like, yes, I'm going to take every client that calls me, because sometimes we're just there and that's just reality. Like, I get it, but that's not the goal. Like, again, for sustainable business, you want a container where you're like, okay, this is the scope of my work and I don't really move outside of that.
Yeah, kind of like online dating, you know, you make a, I don't know why. I always think of this example. And by the way, I'm super old. So my online dating experience that goes back, like it definitely predates Tinder, but like, there was an online dating app that I used way back in the day. This is probably embarrassing, but I always go back to the story. And this online dating app would say, okay, what do you like in a partner? What do you like? Oh, I like honesty, integrity. I like, you know, good head of hair. I don't know, whatever. And then this app asked you, what qualities don't you like in a person? I was like, well, I don't like pessimists. I don't like complainers. I don't like lazy people. So you make a list of like your yeses and your nos. And I also do that now in a less harsh way with my clientele. Like, I won't take on people who want fast weight loss. I won't work with autoimmune clients because it's not my area of specialty. I won't work with people who want performance. And I think that for coaches to go through that sort of yes and no list, it is a really interesting exercise. Not just the yes, but the no as well.
Yeah, I have some clear, like, I won't take clients who want to make money fast, who like they get rich quick stuff, like 6 figures in 6 months stuff, like not what I do. Not the focus. I mean, I've seen that happen, right? But not the focus of my business. I won't take clients who like don't believe racism is real, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Because the containers that I create are like inherently diverse. Like, we're paying really close attention to equity, diversity, inclusion. So like, there's no space for people to come in, you know, who have those kinds of beliefs that like, you know, racism isn't real and reverse racism and stuff like that. Like, there's just no space for that. And we make that clear, like in our branding and in our marketing and what I stand for. And so like, those folks, they won't even call. And that's good because, you know, they wouldn't be a good fit.
That should all come about through your messaging. You know, we talk with our coaches a lot about, you know, if you're handling your content marketing right and your branding right, you will never have to actually sell your program.
Right.
People are going to come to you. You're going to have a discovery call and determine whether you would even work well together. Awesome. It's a great fit. You make an offer. They either want it or they don't. Right. And more often than not, you know, and, you know, here's a question I have for you too, that if I'm actually closing every single client, I'm probably not charging enough. But that might not necessarily be true, because if I'm weeding people out in the beginning,
right,
you know, then it's a different story.
Yeah. I don't like that analogy of if you're closing, I've heard like over 80% of your discovery calls, you're not charging enough. I think that goes along with that super capitalistic, like profit driven way of thinking. That's like about like every last dollar that you can earn. You know, for me, I would be asking questions around, like, if I had an 80% close rate or 100% close rate, I'd be asking questions like, are there people who should be calling that aren't, because they're afraid to make investments? You know what I mean? Like, I would be looking at the pipeline to be like, where are we losing people? Because there must be people who just aren't getting on the phone with us yet. And so like, I want to know, you know, where that leak is. And also it could be that you're just doing a really good job at marketing. And so by the time people want to get on the phone with you, they just want to know how much it costs, which is great. And if you have services that are priced appropriately, you know, that there's something for them to buy. Now, if you're not earning enough money, if you're not able to pay yourself and you're the only person working and you're like working 80 hours a week and you're closing 100% of your clients, then I would probably be like, okay, like we need to probably look at your rates here and like adjust accordingly. But if you're like profitable and well resourced and and everything is going the way that it needs to be, I don't know that I necessarily buy into that.
That's a good point.
That idea.
That's a good point. There's a lot of nuance, right? We can't we can't throw out these platitudes like double your prices, because
I feel like every time someone asks me a question, I'm like, it depends. Yeah. It's like every question.
Yeah,
it's the sign of an intelligent, thoughtful person, though.
Yeah,
honestly.
Well, thank you.
Well, and anybody who coaches people should answer almost every question like that.
Yeah.
Like I have clients say, "Can I have a piece of chocolate every day?" I don't know. Let's talk about it. I don't know this, but like right. I came to my price point for my program, which is a really, it's a pretty set methodology, and I do close 80 to 100% of people getting the phone with me, and so I should double my prices. But in my, like, from the viewpoint of impact, I think I've got the exact right price tag on that thing. Like when I think about what value it brings and who I'm getting into it, it's like that price tag feels right. I haven't increased or changed the price in many years, and it feels like the right price to me. And that's just a gut instinct thing. Maybe I could ramp up the price double and still get, lots of people in, but it feels right in my heart. And so I
think that's what's most important. Like that whole like double your prices thing. What is that? I'm a social psychologist, right? So that's what my PhD work was in. And so I'm always thinking about what's the goal of that really? Like, who does that decision benefit most? That's a really selfish, like decision. Because the sole purpose of that is to just make more money. It's not about reaching more people. It's not about being more inclusive and accessible. It's not about serving more people, clearly. Right. So that the sole purpose of that decision is just to earn more. Yeah. I don't understand. I just don't understand it. I like money. Don't get me wrong. I want to make lots of money, but there are ways to make more money and the amounts of money that we want and need to make without like cutting people out of the process, I think.
Right. And I think one of the reasons that's articulated is like, if you double your price, you're going to get this more affluent client or something who can, but I don't necessarily want an affluent client. Affluence is not one of the characteristics of my clients. Like my clients are like me. They're kind of nose to the grindstone, hardworking people that had to scrape up a bit of money and are really invested in this program. It's not just like, I'm just going to throw my platinum Amex card down and buy this program because I'm rich and maybe or maybe not do the work. I want people who are going to do the work and had to actually kind of pinch pennies to get it done. You know what I mean?
And I think that there, especially, coming from my perspective and my lens, right? If the goal is to get that affluent client, then is the idea that coaches are only serving other affluent people? Like, what does that create? What that could just contributes to this like wealth disparity and access disparity and for health disparities, right? Like there are people who don't have lots of money, people who are marginalized because of their income, because of their gender, because of their race, who need access to these programs, right? And to these kinds of services. So if we're all just like doubling our prices every chance that we get, that's just another way of like cutting people out, and it replicates this like super capitalistic like system of oppression, right? And again, these are not comfortable concepts, but they're real. Like there's data to demonstrate that this is true. And so I think it's important that we're checking in with what our values are and what we believe in so that we are in alignment. So it's like you said, that price feels right for you. If you doubled your prices, you would be out of alignment and you would actually suffer. You probably have anxiety about it. Like there would be other ramifications of running a business in a way that's out of alignment. So why would we make that choice?
I do feel like there's a trajectory and kind of a journey coaches go on where we, when we're new, we do tend to underprice ourselves. And then we find ourselves in a situation where we're charging less, but in order to make enough money to actually survive, we're killing ourselves. Right. Yeah. So there's got to be a balance between that and then so this whole like double your prices, it's a total arbitrary deal. Right. I would rather have our coaches really think through what kind of life they want to live. and understand the role that purpose and value plays in there. And so what do they need to be able to, at the end of the day, net and take home to live that life?
Right.
Okay. So based on that, what do I have to charge to be able to live that life? And so maybe that is, a higher ticket item. Maybe I'm charging, $2,500 for a 12-week program because I really only have the bandwidth to work with X number of clients at a time to really do a good job. So what am I going to put in my program to give them that value?
Right.
It's got to be worth it. You can't just charge. I mean, there's lots of people that charge a lot of money that walk away. I mean, I hear this from coaches who have hired business coaches where they spent $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 and did not get the value out of it.
Oh yeah. I hear that all the time.
Yeah. So a lot of this really, and I, because my house is on the market now, this is really top and present for me that the homes that are priced right sell quickly.
Oh yeah.
And the same thing will hold true for your services. If it's priced right and the value is there, you will never have to feel like you're selling anything.
And that too, to go back to this like time thing, like the patience, is that takes time to get people to understand, because in order to show value, you have to have served people, and you have to have testimonials, and you have to have evidence that people have gone through your programs and that they're willing to, I teach, we don't call it a sales funnel. I've been referring to it as our unfunnel, because the customer journey that we're thinking about doesn't just end with like the sale, which a lot of funnels like end with sale. But for us, it goes into like onboarding and delivery and like building customer, building customer advocates, like brand advocates who like will speak on your behalf, right? And that is part of your sales process, not just your sales process, but your business, the health of your business.
Yeah.
So we have to be thinking about that all the way through.
We do. Thank you for saying that, because I feel like sometimes when I hear business coaches talk, it's like, we're going to put this, like the sales funnel, it's like, here's the Ritz-Carlton. And yes, this is the best thing. But then when they get enrolled, it's the friggin' Motel 6, right?
Right.
So we gotta, the through line doesn't stop at the sale. It's like, what is the programming like? What is the experience like for the client? Nobody's talking about the impact and the value and not that nobody's talking about it, but it seems to stop at like, make 6 figures.
Not enough people are talking about it. And my hunch there, I think about this a lot actually, is that we overinvest in like sales, like business coaching, and people who are looking for like support with their business. We overinvest on that sales and marketing and branding part of it. So we'll hire business coaches who will help us focus on like our sales process and our sales conversations and marketing and funnel. But those people, I mean, many of them are good at what they do, but they are not experienced in actually teaching how to design programs and how to evaluate the process, like the success of their programs. That's a different skill, right? I was a professor. I designed programs. I designed nonprofit programs and grants and research projects for universities. Like that, it's a different skill set. Yeah. So, which is why by the time a lot of my clients get to me, they've actually worked with other business coaches, and they are left with an incomplete system, and they need more of like, well, what is this? How do I talk about my program? How do I build my program? How do I sell this program? So I think that part of it is just that it's a different skill set. And business coaches, you go to school for business or you learn a business system. It's usually just that: build an audience, build your funnel, close your sales. But we relatively recently, we had in our course curriculum, because Laura and I both were on the faculty of a health coaching school. Mm-hmm. And we had all the sales and marketing curriculum for a long time. We probably teach that more than I would say most health coaching schools do. And then in one of our curriculum editions, it's like, you know what, we need a whole chapter on programming. We need to talk about how you program for your clients, what your program looks like, what's your methodology, what are you going to call it? It's definitely a missing link. Yeah. It's such a missing link. And like, it might feel intimidating to people to start thinking of their work this way, but you can link your programs to real like science, right? Mm-hmm. To evidence-based programs, research-based programs. And if you do that, you will stand out like a shining star if you could talk about your work that way, because so many other people are just like rushing to market without thinking that whole thing through. So when you approach your work with this depth, you're just more, it's, again, that long-term game, you're just more successful.
Right. That's where it comes down to just getting out there and actually working with other humans, because the evidence doesn't have to be some research study that no one's ever heard of. No one really knows how to read, and no one really understands whether it was that, it can just be client A, client B, client C. These were their experiences. And this was through working with me. And this is where that evidence comes from. That's the testimonials you're talking about.
Absolutely.
But you're never going to build a testimonial unless you get out there and actually work with somebody.
Yeah.
Also too, we've said before that it's almost like the clients help you build the program. In fact, not even almost, the clients help you build the program, period. So you take on your first client, you work them through some stuff. Some of that stuff is good. Some of that stuff's not so good. And there's that visual of like the waste paper basket with the little balled up crunchy pieces of paper. We throw that away. We try something different. And over time, like I think about the evolution of my program, and it was different for every client up until it got to a certain point where it's like, okay, this is my program. It was like, it's rocky. And then it just was Zen pool. And now it's like, that's my program. I don't touch it. Now the client helps to build it.
Yeah. And our program is a similar thing. I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs one-on-one. And then when we were designing the mastermind, we created like these kind of foundational concepts that are in our framework. But what we do is we actually help people figure out how that applies to them. So I always tell people, like, I'm not selling you a roadmap of what I think you should do. I'm teaching you how to find your best business. Right? There's a lot of programs that will train you in a method. Like you do this and you do this and you do this, and then this is the outcome that you will get. But my clients, it's much more like, here are the core competencies that you need to learn as a business owner and an entrepreneur and someone who wants to be creating this impact. And then let's figure out, according to your own values and your own goals, what the actual strategies are that are right for you.
Which, by the way, is coaching. Right? It's not
a
program. That's like actual coaching. And
that's
this is
coaching.
And from a health coaching perspective, this is why we try to get in the heads of our students and graduates. Like, it's not your job to tell your clients what to eat. Right? And put them on a meal plan and tell them, no, they can't have this, but yes, they can have. That's not what health coaching is. It's not. It's exactly what you said. It's helping them find their best nutrition plan based on their preferences, their genetics, what they're trying to accomplish, all these other things. To Erin's point, if you want to have a piece of chocolate every day, great. Let's find a way to make that fit, because it's you and it's important to you and you enjoy it. And it's, whatever the case may be, that is what you're doing.
Otherwise, it's like a training program or a methodology that you're using. I think coaching is like, a lot of people use the word coach and they mean something else because it's just one of those trendy things. But yeah, I 100% agree that is what actual coaching looks like.
Oh yeah. So tell me a little bit about, so your program, what you look like in clients. So I guess this is like a twofold question. If a coach is considering hiring a business coach, what you were talking about, you got to do some work first. So at what point in a health coach's career should they start considering this? What competencies do they need to have generated? What kind of work do you think they should have considered doing before they enter into hiring a business coach? And what do you look for specifically?
Yeah. So in our mastermind, we're looking for people who have done some premarinary things, like maybe they've done a course, like a marketing course. They have some social media. They have implemented some tactics to try to like grow their platform. They have started an email list. They have some kind of like opt-in that, something that they're doing to generate leads, and they've tested their idea, right? They have, even if they need to change it and like grow it, they have at least had a few clients, or they've had, they're not deviating too far from their past career, and they're just looking to really like refine what they do. So that's what we look for in our mastermind. We're actually just starting a new program called Launch Lab, and Launch Lab is for like people who maybe haven't had all that foundational stuff and is meant to walk people step by step through the beginning. But we're very clear in telling people Launch Lab is not a full business training program. It is designed to help you launch a project and get started, right? So that is like the goal. I think that's very important on being clear about what it is what your offers are and what they are not. But more generally, I think that people need to be consuming, they need to check out a couple of different coaches, like listen to their podcasts, read their blogs, try to get a sense of what their values are and what they believe in, because you want somebody who is values aligned with you. So if what you're looking for is 6 figures in a year, like look for programs that are selling that, and then talk to their clients and be asking people or looking for evidence that like that is being delivered, like that promise is being delivered. So yeah, definitely do your homework. But if you're at a point where you have been consuming a lot of free content already, dabbling on your own for a while, like maybe 6 months, a year, maybe you've made a little money and you're like hitting that plateau, and maybe you feel like you don't quite have the money to invest, but you know that if you don't invest, you probably won't ever have the money. Those chicken and egg moments. Yeah. That's probably the time that you need to hire someone.
Yeah.
Like right when you're there, right when you're having those conversations with yourself around like, okay, this needs to work, and like I'm missing something. That's when you need to start getting on the phone and looking for your coach.
Yeah. That's a great way to phrase it. The chicken and the egg, like you're right there, but it's a little uncomfortable right now. Can you really afford it? Because I think that's going to make you super motivated to actually follow through on it. If it was easy to afford it and it was, you had like, whatever. It's totally different when you feel very deeply invested in what it is you're trying to do. So I love that little piece of advice.
When I hired my first coach, the investment was $697 a month, and it was a year-long commitment.
Wow.
And I had never spent, that was more than my car payment. Like I didn't have any other bill other than my rent that was more expensive than that. And I was like, it made me a little bit sick in my stomach, but I knew that what I used to do was be like, okay, I have that client over there and that client is going to pay for this bill. Like, we call income replacement. So I had like one contract, and I was still working full time. So I was like, that client can cover the cost of that. And that is like the investment. So, but I was on every call, man. Like there was not a call that happened that I was not on, and like not an assignment that was given that I did not do, because I was definitely in that place where I was like, I'm making this big investment. I have kids, by that time, me and my partner have been together for like 15 years. So I wasn't a single mom, but still like that was a big investment. And I was like, I need this to work, because I was no longer in a position where I could work full time and run my business, because my business was like growing to a point where it needed full-time attention. So I was like, one or the other, like one is going to have to go. And if I can't make this business work, I'm going to have to like stop, or just accept that it's just going to be this like side hustle thing. And I wasn't willing to do that. So I made it was a scary investment, but it was the best investment that I made. Yeah. Best decision I made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it just kind of intuitively felt like the right time to do it.
Yes. And I was able to leave my job like that year.
Boom. Yeah. I love this conversation. There's so much good in this conversation. And I just want to thank you for being like really clear about your values, and your vision is very clear. So many awesome just takeaway nuggets of wisdom in this conversation. So I really want to thank you for that. Can you tell our listeners so you have a couple podcasts where they can learn from you. So tell us what those are again.
So Business Remixed is the business podcast, and that came out about a month ago. So there's just some really great content, like really fresh, relevant, new content there. So definitely check that out. That's Not How That Works is the other show that is more about race, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if that's your vibe and you want to like learn more about that, there's almost 80 episodes that are there. We have now moved to seasons. So like we'll be having another season soon. And folks can also come and hang out with me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, but I'm spending more time on Instagram these days.
Yeah. I
What's
love
that
the
handle?
name.
Is it just your name?
Oh, just my name. So Trudi, TrudiLebron, and come find me and say hi. I'm like, I like actually answer my DMs and all that. So like, hit me up, say hello, let's talk.
Really good. Thank you so much, Trudi. I learned a lot from you. I really love your approach. I hope our coaches listening learn from you like we did today. It was very, very impactful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. You're so welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Trudi.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.